Hi everyone. Today I want to take a look at a classic Disney film. This movie is one of the more obscure package films of the 1940s, features several fun songs, and is the only classic Disney animated feature that is not currently available on DisneyPlus. So, let's learn a bit more about the history and music of Make Mine Music. Despite the critical acclaim of Disney's first 5 animated feature films, the majority of those films ended up losing money for the studio. This was primarily due to World War II, which closed the European market to Disney films starting in 1939. And the studio's financial situation faced even more headwinds in the early 40s as America entered the conflict and hundreds of the company's animators went on strike. As a result of all this, full-length feature films with a single narrative and focus, like Pinocchio and Dumbo, were simply untenable projects for the studio to pursue at this time. And so, after the release of 1942's Bambi, Disney's 5th animated feature film, the company decided to change tactics for every other feature-length film released for the rest of the 1940s. The next several full-length commercial films released by Walt Disney were features known as package films. These were anthology-style pictures which contained at least 2, but often several, separate short segments, variously more or less connected to each other. Fantasia was actually an early example of this format. But these later films were much less ambitious and were designed to be financially and artistically lightweight productions, intended to cost less and bring in more profits than the other recent films. The first 2 of these were actually made during World War II and were produced at the request of the US government. Saludos Amigos from 1942 and The Three Caballeros, released in 1944, were commissioned by the US State Department as part of the Good Neighbor policy, which was designed to increase bonds of friendship between the US and South American countries, with an aim to reduce Nazi propaganda efforts in South America. These 2 movies follow the package film style and feature several short segments, some animated, some live action, telling different stories and featuring different songs and music in each. After these 2 movies, the next feature-length film released by Disney was 1946's Make Mine Music. Although this was the first film released after the end of World War II, Disney's financial situation was still somewhat precarious, and this necessitated further reliance on package films. Make Mine Music was subtitled A Musical Fantasy in 10 parts, and consisted of 10 unrelated shorts, all animated and set to music. So, let's take a look at these segments and the music heard in each. But before we discuss the specific segments and songs, I want to go over some general information about them and the film in general. Every segment of Make Mine Music is set to music, making this film much more like Fantasia than Saludos Amigos or The Three Caballeros. But while Fantasia featured all classical music, every segment but 2 in Make Mine Music is set to original popular music. So the film is essentially a popular music version of Fantasia. Another note of interest is that about half the songs featured in Make Mine Music were new compositions written specifically for the film, while the other half were older, pre-existing songs. Lastly, the first song heard in the film is not actually associated with one of the segments. It is instead the title song, played at the beginning of the film during the opening credits. This song, titled Make Mine Music, and performed over the credits by the Disney Studio Chorus, is pleasant but ultimately unremarkable. The short intro verse is not sung in the film, and the chorus is only sung through once. It was written by Ken Darby and Elliot Daniel, both songwriters known for their work on various films, including other Disney movies. Ken Darby was also a performer whose 2 vocal groups, the Ken Darby Singers and the King's Men, performed some of the other songs in this film. After the title song plays over the credits, the film begins with the first segment, The Martins and the Coys, a story based on the real-life Hatfield-McCoy feud. Interestingly, this segment has been removed from most modern releases of the film due to the large amount of gun use, death, and even spousal abuse featured in the short, although it can be found on YouTube. The song used in this segment was originally written in 1936, 10 years before the film's release, by bandleader Ted Weems and pianist Al Cameron. The segment was created to fit this pre-existing song and uses almost all of the 7 verses and choruses of the original song to relay the story of the short. The song was performed here by one of Ken Darby's groups, the King's Men, and is an upbeat country-style song, which could probably be best described as falling into the category of dark comedy. The next segment is the slow and plaintive Blue Bayou, which features a song of the same name, written specifically for the segment. This short, which beautifully portrays two egrets or herons or something amongst moonlit wetlands, was actually originally going to be part of 1940s Fantasia, where it was set to Debussy's Clair de Lune. Although it was ultimately cut from Fantasia in order to shorten that film's runtime, that original version was included as a bonus feature in the Fantasia Anthology DVD in 2000 and can be found on YouTube as well. But in Make Mine Music, the new song for this short was written by songwriters Ray Gilbert and Bobby Worth. It is performed in the film by Ken Darby's other vocal group, the Ken Darby Singers, billed here as the Ken Darby Chorus. And while the song overall is nice and the segment is beautifully animated, both are also a bit slow, lack direction or purpose, and might be boring to some. The following segment is my favorite of the film, the upbeat and hilarious All the Cats Join In. This short tells the story of a teenage girl as she gets ready and then goes out with her friends to the soda shop for a fun time dancing. It features a number of humorous gags which are still funny and relatable today, as well as a few that are definitely outdated, and has a very cool animation style which consists of a pencil animating the action as it goes along. This is actually another short which was subject to a bit of censoring after the original release. There's a section of the short where the teenage girl jumps out of the shower, and the original version shows a bit more skin than the later versions, which were edited for the film's release on DVD. The jazzy song that plays over this short is equally fun and upbeat. It was performed here by the famous Benny Goodman and his orchestra, with vocals supplied by the Pied Pipers, and was written specifically for the film by Eddie Sauter, with lyrics by Alec Wilder and, again, Ray Gilbert. The fourth segment, Without You, is another one whose animation is set to a pre-existing song, but this time the original song is a bit different than what is heard in the film. The song was first written in 1942 by Cuban songwriter Osvaldo Ferres, and was actually originally titled Tres Palabras, which translates to 3 words in Spanish. The animation of this segment is incredibly minimal, showing only a room and then a few landscapes out the window. And the song is a sentimental ballad, performed here by popular Hispanic-American singer Andy Russell. But the English lyrics, which were translated by Ray Gilbert, aren't an exact translation of the original, and while the two versions convey essentially the same idea, both dealing with feelings of love, the actual words are quite a bit different from each other. The song is pretty, but the segment is somewhat slow and very sparse and limited. There's just not enough to the segment to really engage the viewer. The next segment is an animated version of the 1888 poem Casey at the Bat, originally written by Ernest Thayer. The segment is narrated and sung by comedian and singer Jerry Colonna. The segment is fun, and while it adds to and alters a few moments of the original poem, it is still a great love letter to that poem and the early era of baseball the poem depicts. The song, which accompanies the short, is likewise upbeat, fun, and also pretty funny, with lines like,
"Casey's the guy with his eye on the ball, but mostly the ladies."
The music and lyrics were written by, again, Ray Gilbert, who was joined this time by the writers of the film's title song, Ken Darby and Elliot Daniel. Overall, this segment is probably my second favorite in the film, and it seems like that might have been a common sentiment, as it even inspired a sequel short, Casey Bats Again, released by Disney in 1954, although that short doesn't feature the original song or really live up to the quality of the original short. The following segment and accompanying song are titled Two Silhouettes. The animated segment features a ballet performed by husband and wife ballet dancers David Lechin and Tanya Rybuchinska. The animation for this segment was achieved by rotoscoping, or tracing over, frame by frame, the live action footage of the couple's real dancing. The song, once again, has lyrics by Ray Gilbert, while the music was written by Disney's general musical director, Charles Wolcott. The song is performed in the film by Dinah Shore, who sings it beautifully, and it's quite nice, both lyrically and musically. Likewise, while the animated ballet might be boring to some, it's also a bit more unique and is a real dance sequence, which has a bit more to it than both Blue Bayou and Without You. This, coupled with the pretty song, makes this short my favorite of the 3 slightly slower segments of the film. The 7th short of the film is one of the 2 segments that do not feature any original popular music. Instead, the music here is all classical, specifically Peter and the Wolf. written by Sergei Prokofiev in 1936. While this animated version of the story is slightly altered, it is a fun segment, narrated by Sterling Holloway, best known as the voice of Winnie the Pooh, and introduces the music and story of Prokofiev's symphonic children's tale in an accessible and entertaining way. The next segment is After You've Gone. Perhaps the most surreal short in the film, the animation portrays several anthropomorphized instruments parading through a dreamlike, musically inspired landscape, all to an instrumental jazz version of an earlier 1918 Origipop song of the same name. The original song had music by Turner Layton and lyrics by Henry Creamer, a popular songwriting duo who were often just known as Creamer and Layton, and was a very successful song which has maintained its popularity quite well over the past century, even being covered multiple times in recent years and heard in the video game BioShock. The music is performed here by Benny Goodman and the Goodman Quartet, and is fun, upbeat, and quite catchy, although the animation is a little lacking in direction, and so the short overall is brought down a bit by this. But due to it being the shortest of the segments, at least it doesn't go on too long. The penultimate segment, Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, is probably my third favorite of the film, and tells the story of two hats who love each other but are separated, only to find each other again after a tumultuous journey. The song, sung in the short by the famous Andrews Sisters, was written specifically for the film by Ali Rubel and Ray Gilbert, the same songwriting team who would later win an Oscar for Zippity Doo-Dah. It is a really cute song and story, and the animation is very clever in how it portrays the hats as protagonists of the short. And the animation and song together do a great job making you actually care about the love story of these two hats. The final short of the film is another one that doesn't actually feature any Origipop songs. The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met tells the story of, well, a whale who wants to sing at the Met. Willie the Whale, voiced by the famous baritone Nelson Eddy, is an amazing singer who dreams about singing at the Metropolitan Opera. However, a theatrical impresario, Teti Tati, can't believe that the whale can really sing, and so decides that the whale has instead swallowed an opera singer. So, Teti Tati sets out to rescue this singer, and ends up actually harpooning Willie the Whale and killing him. The short, and the whole film, then ends with Willie singing opera up in heaven. It's a pretty odd story, and the music is also slightly less accessible. It consists of mostly short segments from various operas such as Barber of Seville, Tristan und Isolde, and Pagliacci. In addition to the various bits of opera, there is also the folk song Shortening Bread, which Willie sings to other animals in the ocean. While this song has potentially problematic origins, and the dialect in which it is sung here by the white Nelson Eddy is also awkward, it is nonetheless a very fun and catchy song. But otherwise, this segment is a bit odd and certainly not one of my favorites. And so overall, Make Mine Music is a bit of a mixed bag, both visually as well as musically. There are certainly fun segments and songs, but also others which either drag a bit or are just plain odd. However, despite all this, it is one of my favorite package films, is emblematic of the type of films Disney was making at this time, and therefore an interesting look at a period when the ultimate success and widespread ubiquity of Disney was in no way guaranteed. As such, if you're an avid Disney fan, or even just a fan of Origipop music or old movies, this is a film that is definitely worth checking out. However, that's actually a bit of a challenge, because Make Mine Music, for some reason, is actually the only film from Disney's animated canon that cannot be found on DisneyPlus, and no one really seems to know why. Back in 2021, when the film was celebrating its 75th anniversary, there were several articles written about the film's omission from the streaming service, and some had even reached out to Disney asking about it, but no one seemed to be able to find out the reason. Now, almost all of the segments had been released individually on various collections and compilation films throughout the 80s and 90s, and the complete film itself, albeit with the previously mentioned edits, was released on DVD back in 2000. But by April of 2021, there was no other way to watch this film. Then, in November of 2021, Make Mine Music was given a Blu-ray release, along with another package film, Melody Time. But it didn't restore the original version of the film, simply keeping the edits of the 2000 version. And through all of this, it still isn't available on Disney+. It's possible that the film is not being put onto Disney+ due to those controversial and previously edited segments. But Disney could just simply upload the 2000 version with its edits. Or if it wanted to make the entire unedited original version available, I would argue that the controversial elements found in the film are not nearly as egregious as what is seen in Peter Pan or Lady and the Tramp, both films that can be viewed on the streaming service, albeit with a disclaimer at the beginning. Ultimately, no one really seems to know why the film is not available on DisneyPlus. But what's certain is that this film, because of this unusual exclusion, seems to be at least somewhat abandoned by the Disney studio. But that's not to say the film has been entirely forgotten by everyone at Disney. In fact, the characters of Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet can actually be seen in Disney's recent centennial celebrating short, Once Upon a Studio. Overall, Make Mine Music is a fun film and an interesting look at a unique time in Disney's history. And if you're able to find the film, or at least its various segments somewhere, it's definitely worth checking out. And for any of you who already know this film and enjoy the music and songs it contains, I've actually created a Make Mine Music songbook, which contains almost all of the songs heard in the film. I created it just for myself, but don't mind sharing it with others who are interested. There is the issue of copyright, but if you're interested, send me an email and we'll figure it out. I've posted my email in the description below. Thanks for watching.
Hop in the old jalop band.
Hit for the malted shop and
All the cats joined in. Down goes my last two bits, comes up one banana split, and all the cats join in.